Hey guys, in this video I'm going to be talking about Echinodermata, which is a part of the animal kingdom, and what makes Echinodermata interesting is the fact that they are deuterostomes. And if we remember what deuterostome development involves, the first thing we're going to notice is at the 8-cell stage we're going to recognize something referred to as radial cleavage. And the cool thing with radial cleavage is the fact that each one of these 8 cells can go on to become any cell type. It can become any tissue and join any organ. So radial cleavage is called indeterminate for this reason, and it's also referred to as stem cells sometimes. And then once we enter the blastula phase of embryo development and we form the blastopore, what happens to form the coelom, the body cavity, is something referred to as enterocoelous formation. And what this term means is that the mesoderm will fold in on itself. So the mesoderm is the inner lining of the embryo at this point, and the mesoderm is going to fold in and pinch off and eventually form the body cavity. And the body cavity, as it matures and develops, is going to be fully lined in mesoderm. Mesoderm is the red tissue, what we're seeing in these diagrams. And then also the key characteristic of deuterostomes that distinguishes them from the protostome embryo is the fact that the mouth forms second. That's what the word means, deuterostome, second mouth. And that's because the anus will form from the blastopore, and then as the embryo continues to develop, the mouth will form later on. And an interesting note about echinoderms, and specifically with sea stars, is that their larvae are interesting. We are observing bilateral symmetry initially, once we've moved past the initial phases of embryo development, but what happens is that they take on pentaradial symmetry. Pentaradial symmetry refers to the fact that we've got 5 planes in which we can see the starfish looks the same. And the question asked is, why are starfish pentaradial? And one very likely reason for this is the fact that they have a decentralized nervous system. And if you don't have a centralized nervous system, it's very unlikely that you're going to have bilateral symmetry. And the reason for that is if you have bilateral symmetry, you want your nervous system to be concentrated around a head region. But in the case of echinoderms, because they don't have this, they have each radial nerve for each one of its 5 arms and a nerve ring. They are essentially experiencing the world equally from all sides. And while we don't see exactly radial symmetry like we see with other organisms, like the cnidarians, we do see pentaradial symmetry as a consequence. And then what are these radial nerves transducing? They're transducing chemoreceptors, so any chemicals or smells, you can kind of think of it as, that are present in the ocean water around them, as well as photoreceptors. So there's light receptors on the ends of each one of the arms on a starfish, and depending on the intensity of light, the starfish can react accordingly. And it is also important to know that starfish operate on time scales that is very slow relative to what we see, so it's pretty hard for you to actually see this stuff, but if you play something on time lapse, you can see that these things move, and it's pretty cool. And then to give an overview of the organs that we see in echinoderms, the first thing we're going to make a note of is the fact that they don't have a very well-developed circulatory, nervous, or excretory system. And because of this, these cells in echinoderms have to work hard to maintain their own isotonic environment. Isotonic refers to the concentration of a particular solute, and the consequences of not maintaining an isotonic environment would be having a cell shrivel or burst. So if you took a red blood cell, for instance, and stuck that in fresh water, because that's a hypotonic environment, the water will go into the cell and it will burst, and that's bad. So that was a little tangent, but the point is echinoderms are termed osmoconformers, and this has to do with the fact that they are lacking these rather important organ systems. Now, that being said, echinoderms do have sophisticated reproductive, digestive, respiratory, and skeletal systems. They are using calcium carbonate to form a very nice endoskeleton, and unique to starfish is an organ called the water vascular system, and the purpose of this system is to create vacuums of water essentially that help create suction for the tube feet to stick to things. And so what holds a starfish onto a rock when the water is rushing over it really hard is these tube feet and the suction generated by this unique organ called the water vascular system. And so that's going to wrap up this discussion on an introduction to echinoderms. I hope you guys find it useful. Let me know if you have any questions, and thanks for watching.